morning on Weigh-In, Rosiah razzles and dazzles at Rumi Riccarton in the Canterbury Belle Stakes. We have all the reaction. Brightside goes boom over at the Makybe Diva at Flemington. And we catch up with Orchestral's connections about where she might head this spring.
It is an orchestral masterpiece in the Derby.
No mai, haere mai, welcome along to another edition of the brand new Weigh-In for you on Sunday mornings. And we had some pretty decent racing yesterday, both here and across the ditch as well. We'll get through all of it and slightly look ahead as well. I'm joined, of course, by Jayne Ivil and Emily Bosson with me this morning. Jayne, it was great racing, as I said, but geez, the weather played a bit of havoc with all of it, didn't it?
It certainly did. Good morning. Pleasure to be with you all on a Sunday morning. The weather certainly is a talking point for this Sunday morning, and of course we had the abandonment at New Plymouth due to inclement weather, but we also had 4 seasons in one day at Flemington as well. So it wasn't just New Zealand that copped it, it was across the other side of the Tasman as well. But in saying that, we still had some great results on the track, and Emily, Mr. Brightside was certainly one of the leading lights. The New Zealand breds had a fantastic day.
They do, and so often we talk about the New Zealand breds across the ditch and what they achieve, and yesterday was a prime example of that. I think there was 5 New Zealand breds in that Group 1 Makybe Diva field. Incredible, and to take out the race with Mr. Brightside, a graduate of this country, something we can really be proud of. The undercard certainly delivered in that aspect as well, so lots to unpack and celebrate when it comes to what happened across the ditch.
Yeah, and speaking of celebrations, we'll chat to Ben Hayes, the co-trainer of Mr. Brightside Live, a little bit later on into the show. Very lucky to be joined by him. But for now, it's off to the Canterbury Belle Stakes, and we'll just talk about that a little bit. Of course, won by Rosiah. The combination of Tony Pike and Matt Cartwright strike again after their win in the Tarzino last weekend.
Yeah, it's certainly great for Matthew Cartwright, who's having a terrific couple of weeks in the saddle, and that partnership continues with Tony Pike. It was well ridden, Rosiah. We will talk a little bit more about the race in depth, but it was a little bit of a messy race, but a nice result for the team, Emily.
It was a great result for the team, and I think talking to Tony Pike this morning, he said that Rosiah's pulled up really well and they're going to press on towards Ashburton, the Barneswood Farm Stakes. And I said, you've got a number of nice 3-year-olds around you. Is there anything else that you're going to be unleashing? And he said, yes, there are a few more still to come. So expect some continued nice results from the Pike stable.
Yeah, and interesting around the 1,000 guineas. I think she opened at 41s and she's now into 10s. Any word on what she'll look at around that, if she'll go to that?
Yeah, I think that's obviously the plan. We did a few statistics yesterday, Guy, didn't we, when we were on Big Saturday? Dora Bella was the last winner of the 1,000 guineas. That was in 2006 to have come through the Canterbury Belle Stakes. So it's not necessarily the greatest form reference.
Well, yeah, in the last 20 years, there's only been 2 fillies to win, and that was Dora Bella and, of course, La Diosa. Planet Rock runs second in 2011. She went on to win a 1,000 guineas, but if you go back and look at the last 5 winners of the 1,000 guineas, they've all come through the soliloquy. So that seems to be the right form line heading into 1,000 guineas, and obviously hearing from some of the connections out of the Gold Trail at Hawke's Bay last week, that seems to be where those fillies are heading. So obviously things will shape up a little bit more in the coming weeks.
Well, let's take a look at how the Canterbury Belle Stakes played out and hear from some of the key players as well.
Rosiah, the filly by Niagara.
Yeah, she's travelled down in great order. She only came down on Monday. She hasn't lightened up. Yeah, very happy with the way she looks.
The first of what is set to be a cracking spring of 3-year-old races here in Canterbury. Many of these eyeing the 1,000 guineas.
Looks like a race there's going to be plenty of tempo in. There's 3 or 4 go-forward runners, and look, she probably hasn't got the gate speed of some of those, so I'd suggest she'll probably sit back sort of midfield somewhere around there. And she's always very strong late in the races, so I'm sure she will be again today.
Racing in the Canterbury Belle. Working along the inside then is Canelo, trying to pick up ground about last night, and Dream of the Moon coming wide as well. Great time grabbed by the Victress in the centre. Lavender Haze going with it. Rosiah sees daylight 2 off the base. Wider out, Dream of the Moon running on as well. Lavender Haze got to the favourite. Outside Dream of the Moon, Rosiah coming after her from the back. Lil Zena, Lavender Haze, Rosiah, Dream of the Moon. Dream of the Moon on the outside of Rosiah, who's fighting hard. Rosiah put her head in front. Dream of of the Moon outside, coming at it, but it's Rosiah for the Oak Stud. They take the Canterbury Belle. Rosiah beats Dream of the Moon, Lavender Haze. Big run, Lil Zena, then came Canelo.
Very genuine. Felicia's obviously improved from 2 to 3, and yeah, it was a good tough win today. Probably just a little bit of a short run up, taking on the good ones up at home. So nice progression for her down here. She'll only be better if she gets up over further as well. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the season with her.
Yeah, it was a very good win indeed by the Tony Pike trained runner. Let's get you to the wall and get to Emily and Jane to run through the key moments of that race and how it unfolded.
Yeah, there's plenty to unpack, Jane, isn't there, when it comes to the race, because it was a little bit messy at times. And I think the first thing that eventuated was, of course, Rosiah being a little bit slow out of the barriers. Matthew Cartwright just allowed the horse to find its feet.
Yeah, look, stepped away a little bit slowly out of barrier 8, as you can see in the Oak Stud colours, which meant that she sort of settled in the second half of the field. But as you mentioned, a little bit neutral out of the barrier, let her find her feet. And there was a little bit happening in front of her. There was a little bit of movement throughout the race. As you can see, Opie Bosson on the Victress, who was sitting in the trail, comes across heels. We're not entirely clear. Contacts Diablo Blanco, who was over racing at the time. And then there was another point in the race when they were coming out of the chute and onto the course proper, where you could see Let Me Loose in the green colours, just racing a little bit erratically on heels. Things got a little bit tight. What that meant, though, is that it opened up a gap for Rosiah to take. And from then, again, textbook from Matt Cartwright, he got on the back of Lavender Haze, tracked that horse into the race, came off Lavender Haze's heels, and was able to build momentum throughout the straight, Emily.
I thought Lavender Haze was really brave, because it's given Rosiah a drag into the race. He's been sort of floating wide and has finished off pretty gamely. Dream of the Moon is another one that was certainly eye-catching, and you think these horses are only going to improve up in ground.
Well, obviously the runner-up in the Tiaka colours with the blue cap was a little bit hampered too when things got a little bit messy mid-race. I thought she was very brave. I think getting up over a little bit further is certainly going to suit her. All honours with the winner, though. Lavender Haze was brave, faced the breeze most of the way. A little bit to unpack out of the race. Obviously, Opie Bosson was suspended for 6 days for his ride on the Victress. She was the favourite for the race. He did come back and say that he didn't think that she got the 1200 metres, particularly in the soft track conditions. Diablo Blanco did pull up with slow recovery and thump, so a few excuses for him as well.
Yeah, it looks like, as I said earlier, Guy, most of these horses are going to head on towards the Barneswood farm and the Victress, doing that as well, and hoping for some better track conditions.
Well, let's hear from some of those beaten jockeys, starting with Winnamoo Pin on board Dream of the Moon.
Really good performance. She only had the one trial, so she drew a wide gate today, and we kind of just had to take our medicine and go back, and it's been quite a chaotic race, and she hasn't really had much luck, but she's definitely a filly with a bright future. Yeah, she ran massive today, and I'm sure you'll see a better version of her on a better track as well. So yeah, bright future.
Yeah, really happy with the run. She jumped out really well. Just sort of was popped out a little bit wide, but wasn't too worried about that down in the chute. Yeah, when you come past the crossing, I just come up just travelling, had a handful of horse. Seen Mr. Bosson on the Tiaka horse, and I can't home, he started on bit. I thought, oh geez, we had a good chance here. She ran on, and she just got run down that last little bit. It was a top run. Real happy with her performance.
Yeah, really good run from her. Fresh up, Anna does a fantastic job of there, running right through the line, so she'll take a lot of improvement from that.
She pulled up well. We'll see how she goes next week. We'll, like we do with all our runners, the vet and their team will look over them come Monday. But going forward, we're looking to go to the Barneswood. Maybe the wet track today she just struggled with, and we're not sure if she's a true 1200 metre horse, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, she was very disappointing today. She'll jump where I end up where I want to be, but probably like around 200-300 metres after the start, we just caught a check, and she just kind of like just back off a little bit, and just coming over the junction, I was just a little bit flat spot, and she never really stretched out on the ground.
That is the beaten connections from the running of the Canterbury Belle Stakes. Let's take a look now at the 1,000 guineas market and how some of that has affected that market. And as we said, you can see Rosiah there opened at 41s and now into 10s. The market, of course, headed by Alabama Lass, the impressive Ken Kelso and Bev Kelso trained runner into 3s now, captured by Love there at 450. What else kind of takes your eye in that market at all?
Look, I think out of the Canterbury Belle Stakes, it's probably Dream of the Moon, the horse that I'd be most looking at getting out over a little bit more of a trip based on what we saw. Look, Rosiah probably, with everything that unfolded, almost had the run of the race. Didn't have to do much sitting in behind. Got a beautiful drag into the race and everything unfolded really nicely. Lavender Haze, obviously wide without cover, as was Dream of the Moon. So she's probably the one run out of the race that I'd be looking at going forward. But as we already discussed, probably not going to see the horses that ran in the Canterbury Belle really impact the result of the 1,000 guineas too much.
Yeah, we've still got those quality fillies, haven't we, from up north to come down, and we've seen what they're able to do. I guess the question mark this year, Jane, you might be able to talk to this too, is we've got a lot of sprinting fillies, horses like the Victress, Alabama Lass, and just how they shape up when it comes to a mile is going to be interesting. Obviously, they can often get away with it in their own age group, but a horse like Damask Rose that's just building really nicely, closing off well, is one that you really want to keep an eye on.
Well, let's stay with the 3-year-olds, and there was a maiden at the start of the card at Riccarton, but a 3-year-old colt in the Tiako colours by the name of Age of Discovery. They took their time with this colt, had 5 trials before coming to the races, jumped at $1.45 and raced like the winner as well. Needed to show some fight, but did it pretty well to get the job done here.
Paid a lot of money for him as a yearling, $625,000. He's actually from the same family as Merchant Navy, who was, of course, a Coolmore winner up the straight at Flemington and also a Diamond Jubilee winner across Royal Ascot. So he's got a bit of pedigree behind him, this colt. They were patient, weren't they, Emily? And I just thought really interesting with their placement with them, 3-year-old colt up against the older horses on debut. Yeah, it's not to be sniffed at, is it? It's a tough thing to do, to take on the older horses and on debut. That can prove to be tricky, but really like the way he got to the line. And Tiako have a way of managing these colts and getting them to the 2,000 guineas in great shape. I spoke to Sam Burgesson this morning, and he sort of mentioned that they're going to get as much opportunity to look at Riccarton as they can, and therefore they're going to take Age of Discovery to a 3-year-old 1,400 metre race there in a couple of weeks, and then potentially look at something like the War Decree. So just looking after him, working through the grades as they get him towards that 2,000 guineas. I thought the runner-up was probably worth following as well. Full Moon Fever started in the north with Tony Pike, was having its first run for Terry Ray yesterday at Riccarton, and the first 2 really cleared out on the rest of the field. I think that the horse should be picking up its maiden pretty quickly in the South Island. Well, there are a couple other decent races there at Riccarton as well. The New Zealand Cup trial over 1,800 metres, won by John Ol Rocco. And I thought the interesting part of this race was about 1,400 metres out, where Kylie Williams decided to come off the rail and really just take her moment to get, as you can see there, sitting second behind the leader, just stalking the leader at the moment, and got over the top of it. Well, out of the barrier, she was originally sitting in the 1-1, and look, he's got a bit of a habit, if you go back and look through his record, of over-racing in his races. He gets his head up and he's still doing a few things wrong. To me, he's still a little bit of a work in progress in terms of learning his ringcraft a little bit more as a racehorse, but gee, he was good early in his career, wasn't he? He won 3 of his first 6, dead heated in the Timaru Cup, so he certainly looks like a horse that's on his way up. Obviously, Emily, he holds a nomination for the Livermore, so it'll be really interesting to see what connections do. Yeah, Andrew Carsten mentioned that after the race, didn't he? They've got options. They stay close to home or they take on the big guns in the Livermore. I think from what he was saying, they're considering probably staying closer to home, but what an exciting horse for them to have, and great to see him back in winning form, because I know it was just sort of a pass mark from Andrew Carsten with that fresh run, and he's pretty relieved to see him back in his best form. What about the fight down the straight? Fellini and John O'Rourke just going toe for toe. You can see John O'Rourke with the ears pinned back, really trying. He's a racehorse. Yeah, he really is, and he got the job done as well, like a good racehorse does. There was also an open over 1,200 metres won by Perfect Scenario. It wasn't actually the perfect scenario for Amber Riddell early on. She was forced wide, had to stay wide, but just rolled forward really nicely, and again, got that outside running, and look at it, just run home really nicely here.
Yeah, I think when you talk to Sam Burgess and after the race, you could hear sort of saying to Amber, he's a really straightforward horse, he's a gentleman, just get him comfortable and let him work home. And Amber's followed those instructions to the letter. She hasn't panicked, she's just allowed things to unfold and get him in a nice rhythm, get him breathing, and he's come home really strongly. And what a lovely old horse to have around. You can sort of hear the warmth and affection that Sam and the team had for Perfect Scenario. Pleasure to train, just a great apprentice horse, and that's what they're considering doing next. They're going to pick out another nice open handicap with an apprentice on board to take the weight off.
Yeah, look, I thought she did a terrific job given the circumstances. It's not always easy when you get posted wide, particularly as an apprentice and riding for a stable like Te Akau. I'm sure that there was probably a few nervous moments for her in the run, but I thought what she did was just perfect. She sat very quiet, very balanced, let the horse flow into the race of his own accord, and as you mentioned, Emily, what a wonderful horse for connections. He's won, I think, just a tick under 400,000 in prize money. He's been the winner of 10 races and he's performed at group level. Look, I thought he actually looked like one of the class horses in that race yesterday. I guess fresh up, you never know how they're going to perform, but he's got a great fresh up record and gets through conditions. So I think the owners are going to continue to have a little bit more fun with him.
Yeah, they sure will. Great horse to have around and looking forward to see him racing next.
Amber Adele's actually one of 6 apprentices who's won aboard Perfect Scenario, so obviously he's good horse to ride for the ones coming through the ranks. We'll take a short break here on Weigh In. When we come back, we're going to get to Ben Hayes. Very lucky to be joined by him, and we'll also have Britt Taylor to run through everything that unfolded across the ditch in Australia. Stick around for the rest of Weigh In.
Holds them momentarily, and they're racing. Mr. Brightside from barrier number 2 broke away well with also Alligator Blood. Mr. Brightside tanking up a length away. It's the race we wanted. 300 to go. Alligator Blood lets down now. Mr. Brightside, Williams hasn't moved. Alligator Blood joined by Mr. Brightside, who lets rip at the 150. Mr. Brightside 3/4 the length. Alligator Blood and comes clear. Mr. Brightside, a mile marvel. What a performance. Won it by a length and a half. Alligator Blood.
Well, that was the 2023 running of the Makybe Diva Stakes, and I tell you what, it was a very similar result for the 2024 running as well. Mr. Brightside, what a horse he is, gets the job done again there at Flemington. We are very lucky now to be joined live on Weigh In this morning by Ben Hayes, one of the co-trainers of Mr. Brightside. Ben, thanks so much for getting up relatively early after what I imagine would have been a decent night for you. How were the celebrations after your boy got the job done?
Yeah, it was good fun. You've got to enjoy those wins. They're very hard to get, and we've got a super horse, and for him to be able to win 7 Group 1s and All-Star Mile, we're just so lucky to have him, and it's been an incredible ride so far. And yesterday I thought was just great watching, not because we won, but also for everyone. It was a great race. Pride of Jenny was so tough. We thought we had her at the 300, and she kept kicking, and we got a bit worried the last 100, but luckily he just had that little bit left to go over the top.
There's certainly been a lot of build-up, Ben. First of all, congratulations with the rivalry between Mr. Brightside and Pride of Jenny. Tell me, do you as a team now have to really think about your tactics in a race and how you beat a horse that goes out and rolls along at sectionals like she does?
Yeah, she definitely throws a spanner in the works, because his asset is actually his turn of foot, and what she does to us is really take that away from us, because she just goes hard and we have to chase from a long way from home. And unfortunately, we've raced her a lot the last couple of starts. And look, we have to think about it, but it's more important that you worry about your own horse and you ride your horse to run his best, and that's exactly what Craig did. We were surprised Antonio was able to go forward and actually give us something to follow. We thought we were going to be the horse dragging the field up to her, but it just worked out perfect. Absolute 10 out of 10 ride by Craig.
In terms of the horse, we do describe him as being really tough, really tenacious. For us here in New Zealand, he's a really good example of what it means to be a Kiwi bred. And with that comes the fact that sometimes they're a little bit slow to mature. I think one of the most exciting things about him is, as a 7-year-old, it almost seems like every season he comes back better and better. Do you guys feel that, watching his development?
Definitely. When he first arrived to us, he was a very skinny horse that hadn't quite developed yet, and he wasn't much to look at. And every year he's just gotten stronger through the hind quarter, stronger through the girth. Temperament-wise has improved. He's just improved in every way. And what makes him a great horse is every race we've targeted him to, he's got to. He's sound. He likes wet tracks. He likes dry tracks, and he's consistent. I think his worst ever performance was a 7th in a Cox Plate, but that was a huge run. He ran massive. He came from last in a race where it was very hard to make ground, and he's just never let the stable down, and he's a wonderful horse to have in the stable, and we're so thankful to have him.
Ben, he's provided yourself and the team with a lot of firsts in an early part of your career in a change at Hayes Racing. Talk to me about that and what he's given the team.
Look, he was a very important horse for us. He was probably our pin-up horse from the start. There was a lot of change when JD and I took over, and he was probably the horse that went through the grades and was able to perform at the top, and he won the Doncaster, which is very, very hard to do. And because of him and a couple other horses, obviously, he was able to make us trainers look good. And we could actually get performances, and then people start trusting you. You start getting more opportunities and hopefully get the right results and the right horses. And it just rolled on from there. And he was the start of it. Like he's been a horse that's been he's very special. Like he gets carrots in the afternoon. He gets all the loving, don't worry.
Oh, and he deserves it too. What from here? I know we've only just, we're still enjoying the Makybe Diva Stakes victory, but where do you look heading forward? Obviously, Cox Plate Redemption is no doubt on the programme.
I would love to end up at a Cox Plate, and that will be the aim. It's very tricky from this race. They've moved the Underwood, so it's a backup option. He has pulled up really well this morning, trot up lovely, and looks to have come through the run well. So the backup is definitely an option, but haven't spoken to Will or JD. We'll talk about that Monday. We'll just all think about it. And then obviously in 2 weeks' time is the Fian. It's Group 2 worth 500,000. It's a race he won by 6 lengths, going through the grades. And then obviously in 3 weeks' time is the Turnbull, so out to 2,000. So there's 3 options. We can look at all 3, and we'll just decide what we think is best for him to end up in a Cox Plate.
Yeah, figure it out on a Monday, mate. You've got more important things to do, like recover today, I suspect. Thanks so much for joining us this morning live. We do appreciate it, and can't wait to see your boy go around again.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Good on you. Ben Hayes there, the co-trainer of Mr. Brightside. Just awesome to have him on at an early time, jump on and talk about what a run it was. And very exciting if he can go to a Cox Plate again. Yeah,
we're just doing our stats in the break. In 1956-57 was the last time a horse went back-to-back in the Makybe Diva Stakes, so it's so hard to do. 7-time Group 1 winner. And Phil Cataldo, of course, he has purchased the last 3 Makybe Diva Stakes winners. Obviously, Mr. Brightside has won it twice, and then I'm Thunderstruck prior to that, so a real nod to our Kiwi agents as well.
Well, let's relive how the Makybe Diva Stakes played out, of course, won by Mr. Brightside.
Ready for the Group 1, sets, and away they go. Pretty good line too, a Tissue and Tino out the back with Circle of Fire, Pride of Jenny, broke well with Mr. Brightside. At Chiquita Lodge at the 1200, and no surprises here. Pride of Jenny trucks about 4 or 5 lengths in front now. Pride of Jenny, 300 metres to go, coming back to them, 2.5, 3 lengths. Mr. Brightside looking to go back to back, chasing hard. Then Antino, they've split the field at the 150. Pride of Jenny's digging in, 3/4 a half. Mr. Brightside wearing her down. Pride of Jenny, Mr. Brightside, stride for stride, but Mr. Brightside back to back, a neck. Mr. Brightside from Pride of Jenny in a great battle. Mr. Brightside has worn down Pride of Jenny on a heavy 9.
Willow, that was outstanding. I'm so happy for you. Run me through that.
Oh, look, he's just a sensational horse. Ben, JD, Will Hayes, the trainers of this horse have done a great job. Will, who does all these straps to the horse, tells me he's in great order. The people in their stable, and I'm privileged enough to ride him on race day and a couple of jump outs. So I was very bullish about his chances today. The way that he felt, the way that he went, the way he pulled up from his first up run. The boys have said that he's only improved from then. Tell you what, it was a hard slog today, and luckily he's just got that tenacity, that will to win, and he is an amazing racehorse.
It's unbelievable. Like he truly is unique, and yeah, we don't take it lightly to have a horse like him in the stable. He's been so important, and he's to come back now as an older horse and perform like that, it's just huge.
Bit of history, JD. It's a race that's been good to the family. You and your brothers have carved out a piece of history as he becomes the first horse to win this back-to-back at Group 1 level.
There's a bit of a history, mate. Jill Doncaster as well.
Every ownership group is a good ownership group to be a part of, but that one looks really fun.
They get very excited on race day, I can tell you that. You can hear them from a mile off on the course when he wins. And I think his name really helps with that cult following because of the song associated with it, and the fact that obviously it gets played a fair few times after he wins a race. He's just a marvel, this horse. 7th Group 1, he's won 14 million in prize money. He's been a wonderful horse for the Hayes boys and the connections, and even Craig Williams, who there's been a bit of a discussion around his rides on the horse in the past, and it was also quite forward in the media that there were some thoughts of taking him off the horse, but I thought he rode him brilliantly yesterday. The race just set up perfectly for him, and I think it was Craig's 5th win in the Makybe Diva as a jockey. But look, it's just a wonderful story, all parts of it.
Well, speaking of the ride, I mean, he didn't panic, but in the same breath, Pride of Jenny loses nothing out of that. The way she raced and continued to fight all the way down that straight, absolutely credit to her.
Yeah, because there was some knockers, wasn't there, after that fresh run? But absolutely. I think it's safe to say that she's back, maybe not at brilliant best, but the way she races, she's always going to be vulnerable to changing circumstances. But I think she's right on target for those 2,000 metre races. Via Sistina was a little bit disappointing, potentially just second up, racing a bit flat. James McDonald not super chuffed with how she's gone. Track conditions also playing a big part as well for a number of these horses. Warmonger is the other one. Post-race, Makybe really positive about Warmonger, just said hit a flat spot but powered late, really got through the line well. So he's one to follow for the staying events.
I actually think he ran the fastest last 200 of the race, Warmonger, so since he gets up over a trip, and I think they're looking at a Caulfield Cup as his ultimate target. He'll have one run in between, but I thought he was the eye-catcher of the race in terms of a horse you wanted to follow forward as he got over further ground.
Anything else out of that, or should we move along to the Jericho Stakes maybe? Won by Grinzinger Belle, who went through the ready-to-run sale and only cost $32,000.
Bred by Windsor Park stud here in New Zealand, Grinzinger Belle, and she was a cheap purchase, as you mentioned, especially when you look back at what she's been able to achieve thus far on the track. And it was a nice win from her. She's very good, fresh Emily, and she's very good when she can dictate terms in front.
Yeah, she is. She's maturing into a really nice, big frame, lovely big type, and just getting into her racing. And she was so dominant when taking this one out, and really powered away up the straight of Windsor Park stud. No doubt they'll be stoked with that. In terms of Kiwis, you could see the Te Akau colours aboard Quintessa. Spoke to Mark this morning and he said, look, just didn't handle the track. That's all they can take away from yesterday. Looking at a race on October the 5th for her with the Empire Rose in mind as the big target. I think that's something we need to consider when it comes to Flemington. How many of these horses just didn't handle the track and they will bounce back next start? It's going to be an interesting one for doing form going forward. How much weight do you put on it? But Grinzinger Bell has won very impressively.
That was the Let's Elope Stakes, by the way. I apologise for that, getting all my Australian races confused. There were so many black type races yesterday. And then the Cap d'Antibes Stakes. Bellatrix Star was excellent in this. I mean, I know she obviously likes the ground that she was on, but the way that she ran must be very promising going forward.
Yeah, Jane, you mentioned it prior to the show. The sit and sprint, it really suits her, doesn't it, with that short, sharp sprint. And Makybe was almost motionless, wasn't he, in the saddle, waiting for the gap to appear, and when it did, she flew through.
I think it's the best way to ride horses when they've only got a short sprint on them is to keep them covered up for as long as you possibly can. She was a little bit held up during the straight, but I don't think it mattered because the gap appeared at the perfect time and she really accelerated through it. I think, obviously, as you mentioned, Emily, the track conditions probably were to her preference ahead of some of the other runners in the race. But look, she had a good 2-year-old season. She was the winner of an Eclipse Stakes here in New Zealand. I thought merit to her run in the Karaka Million, considering she pulled up lame from the race. And I thought she ran well in a Corsette in her first start in Australia, and a big call to take her straight to Australia to begin her 3-year-old campaign, but they've been rewarded with stakes success at Flemington yesterday. The favourite, Drifting, did pull up with EIPH, so a little bit of excuse there for the beaten favourite.
Very good. Well, Bellatrix Star, very, very impressive there. We'll take a short break here on WAIN. When we come back, we will catch up with Britt Taylor to wrap all the rest of the Australian racing. No mai, hoki mai, welcome back to Weigh-In, and we'll chat the rest of the Australian racing now. Sydney and some very interesting black type races there. Let's bring in Britt Taylor, our expert from over there. Britt, morning to you, great to have you on the show. We'll start with the Jericho Stakes and Sunshine in Paris. Maybe potentially a little bit of an audition for the Everest?
Well, that is all the talk, isn't it? Like at the moment, all of these races are entrees to the Everest, and with only a couple of slots locked away, every time these horses are stepping out and performing well, it's your audition, isn't it? It's your potential spot to get the slot holders' attention. And I do think that after yesterday's Scirocco win, Sunshine in Paris will be able to do just that.
Jolly Star was the talk horse pre-race, short price favourite coming into it. And what did you make of the different rides? Tommy Berry was obviously able to dictate to Jolly Star, and Karen McAvoy electing to go back. Talk me through your assessment of how things unfolded.
Well, it was the New Zealand mare in front in Belclair setting that really strong tempo, which meant that we saw Jolly Star many lengths off the pace and with a lot of work to do coming into the straight here. You see with 400 to go, still a mountain of horses to get over, and just wasn't able to reel them in. But I just think that the way that Sunshine in Paris actually sprinted was just far superior to Jolly Star. And I thought Jolly Star would honestly just go there and just get the job done yesterday. So I think it's a disappointing run, but you know, they can always bounce back.
Are you sticking with Jolly Star heading forward towards an Everest? Do you think third up maybe she can sort of sustain what we've seen previously?
I always think that you can't be jumping off them terribly after one bad run. I mean, we've looked at what happened with Pride of Jenny yesterday. I know you've spoken to Ben Hayes about what Mr. Brightside was able to do, but isn't it so fickle sometimes in this game where we jump off one after a bad run and then they're able to bounce back? So I certainly wouldn't be writing the pen through or anything like that, but definitely it puts question marks up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it opens things up most definitely. Let's move on to the Theo Marks and NCAP. Talk us through your assessment of this one.
Yeah, nice win this. This horse had a bit of a bridesmaid tag on him. He'd only won one race prior to this, and it was actually on this day last year. So talk about horses that just like to stand up at a certain time of year and how it sort of works out. The Golden Eagle is his main aim, and like many of those 4-year-olds who are trying to race for that big prize money, it's now that you want to see them putting their best foot forward, and that's exactly what he was able to do here. Finished off really nicely to beat Bases Loaded and Boom Talk in the Theo Mark. So I think they're really happy with how this horse has performed yesterday.
The Run to the Rose was the other race that was really attracting a lot of attention in the build-up. Storm Boy versus the rest of the field. And we seem to have a new colt sort of putting his hand up to be in contention for Godolphin.
Traffic Warden is his name. Him v their other contender in Broadsiding. When James Cummings was asked about which one do we back in 2 weeks' time when they hit the Golden Rose, he said back them both, because wow, what a colt this is, and didn't it mean a lot to Zach Lloyd as well, obviously in the Godolphin Blue coming down the outside there. Finishes off really strong, rode a bit of a bump as well just there, and just the way he finishes off, I really, really like this colt, and I'm so excited for what this means for that Golden Rose, because it is setting up to be one of the races of the spring, I think, when you're looking at the might of Godolphin taking on Coolmore. And Storm Boy, I think, lost no admirers yesterday. He was a little bit slow out, copped a bit of a sweet squeeze out of the gates, and then really had to work to find the front. He was entitled to fade in those concluding stages, and he didn't. He kept on fighting. So it sets up to be an incredible Golden Rose in a couple of weeks' time.
We see great racing across both, of course, Flemington and Rosehill yesterday. Have you got a moment of the weekend for us, Britt?
Well, I think it has to be Mr. Brightside and the Hayes brothers. They just deserved it so much. But in particular, I thought there's the vision of Ben Hayes with his wife Grace watching the race, and you can just see they're riding every single bump of it. I'm no lip reader, but you can see Ben going, "Go Mr. B, go Mr. B," and then when he finally crosses the line, gets the better of Pride of Jenny, you can just see them embracing. You see Grace just absolutely break down crying. It was just so, so beautiful to see, and it's just so well deserved. Look at how happy they are to see their champion, Mr. Brightside, taste success. And the one other moment that I probably should mention as well was Jayla Kennedy after the last race. She said this is like winning a Group 1 when she won on Berkeley Square. So I thought that was beautiful to see.
Look, in terms of Jayla Kennedy, Brett, we did hear from her post-race, and I remember her strapping the horse before she even started out as an apprentice. And look, you would know from working hands-on with horses how important they are, and that relationship and association she had with him.
And I think because she'd worked with him from a 2-year-old, so you're there from the first day that they've walked into the stable. She will have been there for all of his first, the first track gallop, the first time through the barriers, the first time at the races, all of those really special moments that build such a lovely connection with the horse. And then to win at Flemington in testing conditions, there was snow there at Flemington yesterday. You're thinking, oh, how far we've come. Not just for her as a rider, not just the horse, but them as a duo. So I thought that was really lovely to see, just that unbridled joy from her, and what a delight she is.
Good on you, Brett. Hey, thanks very much for joining us this morning. We'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks so much, guys.
As Britt just mentioned, geez, the weather at Flemington yesterday, I don't know if you saw, but there was a slow-mo at one stage of the hail and the rain just absolutely pelting the umbrellas, and there were 10,000 people, and I mean, good on them for showing up.
We had a bit of a chat about this. When you're in Australia, everybody says, oh, you'll be used to this, you're a Kiwi. Well, I'm sorry, but it doesn't hail in Auckland very often, if ever. It's really 4 seasons in one day over there, as you would know firsthand.
I used to cop that regularly. As soon as it was a bit chilly, it would be, you're used to this, you'll be fine. You don't need to worry about the weather. But having lived there for 7 years, I can honestly say that a winter in Melbourne is just about colder than a winter in New Zealand. So I think 4 seasons in one day is exactly how you describe the city, because you can go from rain and hail and wind to sunshine in a matter of an hour. So it's exactly what we saw at Flemington yesterday.
It's exactly what I saw at the 2010, I think it was, Melbourne Cup as well, won by Americane, but my word, that day was, as you said, 4 seasons in one day. We'll take a short break here on Way, and when we come back, It was, of course, abandoned in New Plymouth, but we'll delve into what that might mean for some of the key runners going forward.
Sun up to sundown, got to keep working. No, we never get tired of this. No, we never get tired. No, we never get tired of this. No, we never get tired. Walk through the fire, still searching for somewhere to wait out this storm. Feel like it's been this way for far too long.
They had 15 mils of rain overnight. The track was a heavy 10, but as you're aware, you're on course. The rain just continued. Riders were concerned after race 1. Heavy track horses weren't handling the track, and it progressively got worse. After running a race 3, they were unanimous that it was unsafe to continue. We can't control the weather. Like I say, the forecast wasn't great, but we managed to get 3 races, and yeah, safety is paramount, hence the abandonment of the meeting.
I think those pictures told the story. Mud in the faces of the jockeys, and also those kids jumping around. A parent's worst nightmare to have to deal with that. Look, I know there have been abandonments in recent times that have frustrated a lot of people, but sometimes Mother Nature, you just can't do anything about that. And yesterday was an example of that. They got through 3 races, which I thought was a miracle that they managed to even do that. What it does, though, now is leave a few questions around some key runners, doesn't it, Emily?
Yeah, it does. I guess it was really that open handicap that was the main focus, because there were some Group 1 horses in there heading towards some big targets that needed that run. Andrew Forsman chatted to him this morning about Mustang Valley, and he's going to trial her on Tuesday at Rotorua and then go straight on to the Arrowfield. And Ladies Man's in a really tricky spot, because when I was talking to Alan Sherritt this morning, he just said we were on the back foot trying to get to the Livermore anyway, and then with this, it's just added another element. It's pushed everything back. So he's sort of going to just take a pause, reassess, and not rush things, and maybe aim to some of the Christmas features with Ladies Man, rather than sort of rushing to get to these spring Group 1s.
It's always really disappointing when you see an abandonment of the meeting, but I think first and foremost the safety and welfare of participants and horses is what we need to be thinking about, and absolutely the right decision was made regarding racing yesterday. I even made a comment to my partner after race 1 that I would be very surprised if they got through the day, just because of the conditions and poor visibility. I just feel a little bit sorry for the club. They've lost a meeting a few months ago due to bad weather. I was up there a few weeks ago where we actually started the meeting 2 races or 2 hours earlier than what was originally put down to try and get through the meeting before the bad weather arrived. So they've been obviously a victim of circumstances in recent times, but you can't control the weather, and you've got to make the right decision based on the safety of everybody. So yeah, look, I think it's really disappointing, but the right decision was made.
It really wasn't the only issue on the day, and you say that, you know, that sort of stuff is maybe out of their hands, but there was something that was in someone's hands anyway, and that's around the starting gates not being there on time. That, of course, delayed the meet, which in the end didn't really have much of an impact, but this is something that really shouldn't happen.
Well, we say it didn't have much of an impact, but what happens when a club loses its meeting is that it has all the costs and not the turnover.
Right.
So the fact that the gates didn't turn up on time meant that they raced 1 less race than they would have, and it all counts, you know, when it comes to turnover and it comes to clubs and their livelihood. So, look, I thought, obviously, again, some things you can't control. In life, there are breakdowns, there are mechanical issues, and no one's really at fault because these things do happen. But I think it's probably a chance where you can look to reflect at what you could possibly do to make sure that it doesn't happen again. We did see in the north, I think only a couple of months ago, a meeting at Pukekohe by memory got put back a race for the same reason, an issue with the transport of the barriers to race day. So do we now look at the timing of the arrival of the barriers on race day? I know there are a lot of clubs that have their own gates, so it's not an issue, but for the clubs that don't have gates on course on a permanent basis, do they need to arrive a night before?
Well, there's a tweet there that you can see on screen at the moment from Entain Managing Director Cameron Roger, and I mean, he sums it up really, isn't it? This sort of stuff just shouldn't be happening. When so much hard work has been going into making sure that racing in New Zealand is getting better and, you know, stakes are increased and all that sort of stuff, and then you get something like this.
Yeah, it's really disappointing, isn't it, for all the participants? But look, touch base with Darren Balcom this morning with regards to what happens from here, and he just said it's a Monday morning review situation where they go back and reassess and see what changes could be made or what potentially went wrong, which is important. And obviously we've got that race, the Road to the Jericho, which was a qualifier for the Jericho Cup, potentially where that race ends up as well. So yeah, lots to unpack. You can't control the weather, we've said that, but I guess protocols and what they mean and how things are affected, that's got to be reassessed.
And I don't think it's about sitting around a table and laying blame to anybody specifically, and I think that's sometimes what worries people, that, oh, you know, it's going to be my fault. Or I think it is about coming together with ideas and working out how you can prevent these things from happening. So don't look at it as negative, but look at it a way of how you can get a positive out of it by making change that will benefit everybody. And I think the word that Cam Rogers used is in terms of professionalism. We all want to work in the most professional way that we possibly can. So when we're being critical, I think we need to look at it in a positive light of how we can be better instead of looking at it as a negative and laying blame.
Well, I don't think that would have been anyone's moment of the week this week. But we will get to the moments of the week now. Jane, I'll start with you. What stood out to you this week?
Well, this
what
was
made you smile?
Well, a little bit personal. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Oak Stud colours, the blue and white. Always puts a smile on my face given my history with Sea Change. But I just thought it was a great moment for the Oak Stud and a foundation mare of theirs in Just Cruising, who was obviously the dam of 3 stakes performers herself. But that family has just continued to go well for the stud. And Rosiah was the most recent stakes winner of the family, but it includes horses like Antrim Coast, Seven Seas, Dracania, Storm Boy. They could have had an outstanding day if he had been able to win the Run to the Roses, but it is just a family that just continues to keep performing for the Oak Stud. So seeing Rosiah win at stakes level yesterday was certainly my moment.
Emily, yours?
Well, I went with Amber Riddell because, yeah, just to get that first win for Tiakau and to do it at Riccarton, I think was such a big occasion for her. And post-race, we all saw the scenes with her nana on course celebrating with her. She's got that connection to the Christchurch area. And to come from such a racing family that has plenty of history within the sport, I just think that's really special. And no doubt Mum and Dad and all the family are super proud of her. And for her personally, to have put on the Tiakau silks and have guided Perfect Scenario to such a lovely, comfortable victory, no panic. I think she'll be absolutely chuffed with herself, and she should be.
Well, as we said yesterday on Big Saturday, when you put those silks on and you ride like that and you win like that, people start to take notice, that's for sure. So certainly well done to her. I love the big smile from her as well afterwards. She was just so chuffed with how she performed, and why wouldn't she be? There were also some interesting announcements from NZTR in the last couple of days. Let's take a look at those, and you can see the top 3. There's the Sistema Railway boosted by $100,000 to $700,000 million Aotearoa Classic upgraded to listed, but it's those bottom 3 that I think are the most interesting.
Yeah, look, I think moving the Telegraph forward to January 4th is a great move. We do know, Emily, when it comes to sprinters, the time between runs is really important. The way that it sat in the calendar was that it was only 2 weeks into the railway, so it gives a better build-up from the Telegraph to the railway.
It does, and we've seen in recent years so many horses sort of going to the railway and then avoiding the Telegraph, because you've also got the trip to get down to Wellington for the Telegraph. So I think this new setup is going to work much better for connections of sprinters, to see really rich racing in the sprinting ranks, beautifully spaced to give everybody the best chance. Disappointing that the Living Classic is downgraded to a Group 2, Jane.
Look, I think it's a race that was probably messed with a little bit too much in terms of movement in the calendar and not being moved to the right spot in the calendar, and it meant that the field was impacted for a number of years. And even though I think there was format of last year's Living Classic winner, it still meant that the race was downgraded, which was really unfortunate, because I know they had plans for it. They had plans to increase the prize money and to build a race day around the meeting. That probably won't happen now that that has happened, and I think we're going to see a downgrade in prize money now for the Living Classic. I'm from memory, I think it goes to 400,000. So a little bit disappointing that we're having races lose Group 1 status, and there are plenty that have on warnings from the patent committee as well. So that's up to us to make sure that our programming is right, our calendar's right, and we get the best horses in our good races so that they can continue to hold Group 1 status.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to being open to change and being open to, okay, this has worked previously, but it doesn't just quite work now. What can we do to shift the calendar so that it does work? And we've seen these changes begin to be filtered through, and I really hope that we can continue with that, continue reassessing our big carnivals and how they appeal to the different market we've got nowadays.
Well, the other piece of news in the last few days this week was the retirement of one of the superstars of the last few years, one of the superstars of all time, Golden 60. Look at him win here. He was an absolute freak, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. 26-time race winner, about 34 million New Zealand dollars in prize money. He was, of course, sold at the Karaka Ready to Run sale, I think for around $300,000. Three-time Hong Kong Mile winner, three-time Champions Mile winner, 4-year-old season. He won the Hong Kong Classic Mile, Hong Kong Classic Cup, Hong Kong Derby. His 5-year-old season, 4 of his record 10 Group 1 wins, part of a 16-race unbeaten streak. He was unbelievable.
Well, look, he holds the record worldwide for the highest stakes earning racehorse, so that's a huge accolade, Emily. And I think what was really important for Golden 60 and what made him really special in Hong Kong was that when he started to develop as a really classy racehorse was during COVID, and I think it gave a lot of people a lot to look forward to and watching him race. Yeah,
because the restrictions are really tight in Hong Kong, and yeah, the Hong Kong people love their racing, and to have a horse like that to be flying the flag and something to go and watch, or not go and watch, but be able to watch from home was such a bonus. And I think he was 9 years old, or he is 9 years old. That takes a lot of management to have raced a horse at that level for that amount of time. So for Francis Louis and Vincent Ho, who rode him, just great management. And the owner, of course, he's a hero. He always will be a hero in Hong Kong. They worship their horses in horse racing. I'm sure he's going to have an incredible send-off.
He was one of those horses that you'd either put in the diary of when he was running, or you'd put a reminder on your phone or something just to make sure that you did not miss him. He was absolutely superb, and we were treated to be able to watch him. We'll take a short break here on Weigh In. When we come back, we'll catch up with Orchestral and just what is going on with her.
'Cause it's a bittersweet symphony, this life. Try to make ends meet. You're a slave to the money, then you die. I'll take you down the only road I've ever been down. Maybe it's the way she walked.
They're racing towards the final furlong. The 2-8 O'Brien, Hotbots, Illinois on the inside, Jan Bruegel, Dara Mile on the outside, trying to close with Sunway. Jan Bruegel and Illinois above the heads. They go towards the line, and Jan Bruegel, 4 out of 4, and wins a ledger.
In front now is Porta Fortuna, and away she goes from Fallen Angel Soprano. Porta Fortuna is the winner. Porta Fortuna completes a hat-trick of wins at the highest level in the Matron Stakes for Tamarkand and Donegal O'Brien. Economics in between horses. These fight out the finish. Running on is Los Angeles. Economics and Auguste Rodin. Economics from Auguste Rodin. Should have for a big run by the Japanese coat. On the outside was Los Angeles. Economics hits the big time in the Royal Bardine Irish Champions Stakes for Tamarkand, William Hangers. She said never in your wildest dreams.
I love the Irish accent at the best of times, but particularly when a horse wins like that. Aidan O'Brien, what a day for him. 2 Group 1s overnight in the UK and Ireland. And Economics there taking out the Irish Champions Stakes as well. Well, from their champion to one of ours, Orchestral, let's catch up with what she's been up to. I went out to the trials at Ellerslie. She had a jump out, and we caught up with her and her connections.
I was pleased with the way she presented. You know, she grew during a spell, and we've been waiting for her to furnish, and she's been slow to do it, to be fair. She's been mixing her feeding, and we've had to wait and cotton wool her a bit.
Just on the awards side of things, what did that mean to you? She scooped 2 pretty special awards the other night.
That was probably testament to her class and her resilience, and of last season she danced every dance really, and we asked a fair bit of her, and she kept answering.
It's the sight we all envisage. It is going to be orchestral, an orchestral masterpiece in the derby. Orchestral's looming large for J-Mac. Orchestral went to the lead, shut the gate. J-Mac's back in town. Orchestral has bolted in.
It's great pressure to have. I thrive on this, but look, it'll be great pressure next year because I think we'll see the fully made animal then.
Oh, she's class. She is a class act. Orchestral in tune again today.
This year's sort of continuing to put down foundations. Maybe in the autumn we might get excited at something really big, but I have no doubt in my mind that she will be up to the best weight for age company in Australia at some stage of her career.
Ready, gates are back, Orchestral's starting to make her presence felt. The leader's still wet and wild, Orchestral coming to the outside of her. Rill's just asking for a little bit from the mare. Orchestral struck the front and Orchestral very professionally won it.
When we got good footing, it was important to have a good hit out, and Craig's summation afterwards, it couldn't have been better.
She just sees other horses in front of her and wants to get in front of them, so she's having a nice little blow that's going to tidy her up.
We've got a couple of options. I don't want to be, secretive about it. Obviously one's Hastings and one's Sydney, and they're not Group 1s in Sydney, but the reason we're sort of leaning that way a little bit is, as you saw again today, she's a little bit tardy early and doesn't have a lot of early pace, and Hastings might not be quite as forgiving as a track as maybe Rosehill or Randwick, and probably that could be the way we're leaning most.
Well, I'd like to see her go to Hastings, so I've got the ride, but I'm not too sure what the team are going to do, but I'm sure they'll work that out.
Yeah, I'm not surprised Craig Grills wants her to go there. Of course, the champion 3-year-old at the awards on Sunday, and then, of course, as well, the champion stayer. Keeping his cards very close to his chest, Mr. Roger James. I called him this morning, and he still hasn't made a decision. He even threw Melbourne, and there is a possibility as well. He did say leaning towards Sydney. What do we make of where she might be going?
Look, I think bottom line, and look, Roger does such a wonderful job with these mares, these fillies and mares, is that he has made it quite clear that she's only going to have a really light spring and focus on perhaps an autumn. So he's looking after her in that movement from her 3-year-old campaign to her 4-year-old campaign, which, Emily, can be really difficult at times for mares. They go from racing their own age group at 3 to then having to step up into some pretty big races if that's the target as a 4-year-old.
It's a very difficult thing to do, and not to be underestimated is the transition from 3 to 4. And so often you see a brilliant 3-year-old filly who just can't make the leap into weight for age company or in taking that next step at 4. And the trainers like Roger who are just patient and keep that in mind and just sit back, let her do her thing in that early part of her 4-year-old season. They reap the rewards in the late autumn of their 4-year-old career. So the future's still very bright.
Yeah, and he's giving her time to really mature. And Emily, you would have seen her in the flesh a number of times. She's a big mare with a big frame, and obviously it's going to take a little bit of time to furnish until she's sort of the finished product. So it's a great thing about Roger and his patience when it comes to his horses.
Yeah, it is. He's so meticulous with what he does. Whatever he picks out for her, he'll have thought through so precisely, and it'll be the right thing.
Well, if we have to wait a little bit longer to see her race, and if she can perform like she did last season in Karaka Million Night, the Vinery, and of course the Derby as well, then I think we're okay to just wait a little bit longer to find out where she might be going. Well, we're going to try and guide you towards a potential winner or two from the races over the last couple of days. It's our Black Booker or our Weight Watchers. Emily, who have you gone with?
Well, I went with Little Xena, who of course took its place in the Canterbury Belle Stakes. Loved the way this horse got to the line and was from a long way back as well. I'm looking at these 3-year-olds heading over a little bit more ground over the coming months, and I think Little Xena will relish that.
Jane?
Look, I've gone with Makybe Dick. He was the winner of the first race at Flemington yesterday. He is the son of Toronado, who I have a little bit of a love affair with. He'd just about be my favourite sire on the books in Australia. He's a sire that just continues to produce winners, and Makybe Dick's another one of those. He's had 5 starts now for 3 wins and a placing. I thought it was a great ride by Damien Lane to weave through the field, and his closing sectionals were some of the best of the day. He ran the fastest last 6, 4 and 2 of the race, and given that he's still running around at benchmark level, he's still got the ability to go through the grades a little bit before they need to look at anything a little bit tougher with him.
Be honest, you just want to see Makybe Dick because you want to see that tattoo on the owner's leg.
Well, it's a pretty good looking tattoo for those that are on the social media pages of Price Kent Racing. I urge you to look it up. One of the owners has had a whale tattooed into his ankle carrying the colours of Rupert Lee. So
that's dedication.
Yeah,
that is dedication to ownership.
It certainly is. Mine is Leah. I don't know if you've seen the trial yesterday, but if you haven't, jump on trackside.co.nz or the Trackside Twitter account. It was a heck of a trial there at Riccarton. That is it from us for Weigh In today. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. It is, of course, Great Northern and Great Hurdles Day. Look out for that today from Te Rapa, and the Guerin Report tomorrow night. With Michael Guerin, they look back at the trials from Ellerslie and how the track might perform next weekend.